Hey everyone, thank you for joining us at Cults to Consciousness. We are doing another version of our culty news, joined by Kara Nuanto. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I love jumping on with you. We can talk Mormonism all day. We were both raised in Mormonism for those who are new to the channel. And today we are discussing Tim Ballard. So, who is Tim Ballard and why is he relevant? Um, well, he's super Mormon. He's been in the news since September, I would say, and things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Kara's been doing an amazing job covering it over on her channel at Nuance Ho, so go subscribe to her if you haven't already, and on her Instagram account as well. The links are all in the description if you want to just follow a link. And so Tim Ballard, he tried to claim that he was visited by Jesus. He's supposed to be like the next prophet, and he wants to lead everybody to the church by essentially taking over within government. You may know him from Operation Underground Railroad, which he founded, I believe, and then has since been kicked off because of what we're going to talk about today. He had the movie Sound of Freedom based on him, but we know now that most of that, according to court records and documents, was not really true or factual. It was very inflated. And we also learned from previous things, and we've done episodes on him before, also linked in the description, that a lot of this was just in an effort to boost himself up, the brand of Tim Ballard. It's like all these different charities, I guess you could say, or organizations to help children, was really just to funnel everyone to his website, his books, make him more money, which the intentions are not great. So, disclaimer here for everybody before we even dive into this, we are anti-human trafficking. Absolutely. We are not saying that what he and his organization were doing or allegedly doing was bad. We are just calling him out on things that what he's personally been up to. And now the biggest updates coming forward are these women who have decided to sue him and not be anonymous anymore because of these SA, we're going to abbreviate for the algorithm, SA allegations against him that had to do with these stings going to get these kids. So, did I miss anything as far as who Tim Ballard is, Kara?
I think you got it. Just maybe a
Okay.
malignant narcissist. We could add that, but that's just my opinion.
Yes. Yes, and we've done literal hours of content on this guy on our channel and on Kara's channel. So if you want a deeper dive into anything I just said, refer to our previous videos.
Yes.
So today we're talking about the updates because, like I said, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Quick little note, Jonathan is not here moderating today. Please be kind to each other in the chats. If anyone is extremely problematic, just type mod in capital letters and I will try to keep an eye on the chat so I can make sure and keep it a safe space for everybody. And with that said, super chats are greatly appreciated and prioritized, but feel free to drop your questions at any time if you have them as well. So, Kara, let's just dive in. I know you have this slideshow all prepared for us. You're
I
always
love a
so
slideshow.
organized. So,
Organized
let's
in
just
slideshow.
get into it. Yes. All right, go ahead.
So many of you might have heard that the women have finally come forward with actually sharing their stories and their names and their faces. So this is an article out of the Salt Lake Tribune that says women accusing OUR founder Tim Ballard of sexual assault speak out. 6 plaintiffs who have filed 3 lawsuits against OUR founder Tim Ballard say they are seeking accountability. And if you followed our previous reporting and if you follow what the allegations have been in these extensive lawsuits, you know that these women, they just wanted accountability. They just wanted to save children. They were all either volunteers or worked for OUR, and they wanted to save kids. They were
Mm-hmm.
people who cared about this cause. And in doing that, they were able to be taken advantage of by Tim Ballard under this guise of this thing called the couple's ruse, you know. So a lot of people are like, okay, well, where are they? Can they step forward? And we know that it's really hard for victims to do this. So first and foremost, we have to give a big round of applause for these women who have undergone so much, you could say, scrutiny, harassment.
Yeah.
And I think it just makes such an amazing space for victims of abuse to come forward. It's difficult to be heard and seen, but these women are absolutely my heroes. And the allegations just and amendments to their lawsuit just keep getting more and more in depth. And we're getting to the point where there is going to be DNA evidence. So this one I wanted to make a video on, but it just made me so sick. But we'll have to put a pin in this, and we'll get into more of it later. But one of these women, this is her and her, I think now ex-husband. Her name is Celeste Boris, and this headline says, "New court filings accused Tim Ballard of violent sexual assault against his former assistant. An amendment filing alleges that Operation Underground Railroad leaders knew of Ballard's alleged misconduct, but did nothing to protect his assistant." So pin in that. We're going to get into some things will just make your absolute stomach drop. And if you know where I'm going with DNA evidence, you'll understand why. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess before we even continue, I should have mentioned earlier, trigger warning for this episode because we are going to be mentioning specifics. So just know that it's going to get a little bit heavy as it tends to on this channel, but I just wanted to put that out there that we are going to be mentioning specific things that these women have come forward and said that he had done to them.
The specifics are through the roof, and it is frustrating how much these women are still not believed by people. And it's like, how much do they have to keep saying? So I guess we'd call it like a press conference that these women held, really heart-wrenching. If we had more time, we could play their stories. But if you read the over 80 pages, including all of the amendments, if you read what they have been alleging has happened to them under the hands of Tim Ballard and OUR. Adam Herberts is a great reporter out of Fox 13 News in Utah, and he has put together not even, I wouldn't even say like a majority of the things that they allege, just this is some of the things that are in their lawsuit. And when you put a name to a face and they have their reputation and they just, as they say in this, in their press conference, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And they're trying to just say, this is what happened to us. We were taken advantage of. We're asking for accountability. We're asking for you to at least see that we're only a handful of victims actually that Tim Ballard has assaulted. And we're just trying to get some justice and some accountability here. And there's plenty more, I know, of people who are not able to come forward at this time, obviously for various reasons. So Mary Hall is an actress, and throughout the lawsuit, these are the accusations against Tim Ballard. Hand on my knee and my thighs, touching, rubbing, grabbing across. Again, this is all part of his couple's ruse. And doing things at a strip club. She's the one who talks about she witnessed Tim Ballard give Tim Ballard's son an unknown pill at a strip club to help him with some type of anxiety or something. This is Sasha Hightower. She's an actress, and she's actually we're going to call it a grape survivor right now. And she actually reached out to Tim Ballard originally to, long story short, she's already been a victim of these things. And yeah, it's heartbreaking, but she's another person who was supposed to help with this couple's ruse. And she also alleges that he's grabbed her butt, he's grabbed different parts of her body. There's a story where she thought that she would be raped by a female trafficker while he watched. And then another story where she had to roll on top of him while topless in effort to prevent an assault by an escort. And there's in another video, there's also a Vice article that you could pull up that we can get into as well. But this couple's ruse that Tim Ballard was taking these women, these actresses, people who don't have the training to be able to handle these situations, and just having them kind of go for it. But what it actually turned out to be, instead of this, like, you're supposed to be this sex trafficker with me, what it actually turned out to be is Tim Ballard actually taking these attractive women to foreign countries and effectively trafficking them for his own sexual gratification. And the allegations of women who actually have been trafficked and assaulted by Tim Ballard, I am not making this up. The number of women are exponentially higher than the number of children that Tim Ballard has ever actually saved from trafficking. So there's other reports that are going to be coming out of the numbers of Tim Ballard, of what he has claimed, there is absolutely nothing to substantiate his numbers. No names, no faces, but just the opposite is true of what he has actually done in the effort to save trafficked children, doing these types
Yeah.
of assaults. So it's actually doing a big disservice to the entire movement. You know, we want to stop this type of horrible thing, but Tim Ballard, this is what he needs to be accountable for, as well as OUR. This is Kira Lynch. She is a hairdresser, and it started with her just being an attractive hairstylist in his life and doing his hair, and then eventually being told that she was, by him and his ketamine trip induced psychosis, and from his psychic. She's one of the women that was told that she was married to Tim Ballard in a previous life. So everything that they did was sanctioned by God, sanctioned by the Apostle M. Russell Ballard. And she was really, really bought and sold that this was what needed to happen to save the kids. So many different things in this. He took off my pants, pushed himself on top of me, pulled down my pants, grinded on top of me while I begged him to stop. I'll try to rush through these because I know that these are really intense. And then finally, Celeste Boris, this is basically his executive assistant. There's so much evidence that she has of what she was forced to do during this couple's ruse that he had going on. Caught an escort taking pictures of me during a massage while Tim was supposed to protect me. Had my personal info exposed while undercover. Coordinated meetings with Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes. We'll get into his implications and all of this in a second. Pretended to have sex with him in the shower, had me straddle his lap, laid me down on the bed to show me how to fake FUCK. It goes on and on. So Celeste Boris, like I said, pin in that, and we can talk more about what she has added to the lawsuit, different text messages, and the DNA of this violent sexual assault as well.
Jeez. So real quick, I think I forgot
Yeah.
to mention earlier.
Go ahead.
Maybe I did mention it, but you briefly talked about it just now about how these women thought that this was sanctioned by a high-ranking apostle of the Mormon Church because they were supposedly teamed up, or that's what Tim Ballard was telling them. And I think that was the beginning of everything, where the church came out and was like, we don't want anything to do with Tim. And Tim was like, what do you mean? We're like BFFs. And Elder Ballard, the apostle, not related, was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And was very clearly trying to distance himself from Tim. And it was super embarrassing for Tim, obviously, because he wanted to rise in the ranks of the church. And I believe it's rumored, has it been confirmed that he's been excommunicated from the church?
Yes, I think it's as confirmed can be, because it is in the women's lawsuit at this point, and they have good reason to believe that. And so if they're going to be going to court to prove all of these things, I don't think that they would put that in their lawsuit if they can't prove that.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there so everyone understood that I'm assuming most of these women are Mormon, and they're thinking that a high-ranking leader of their church is saying, don't worry, guys, this is okay for you to do, even though you're married or even though it feels weird. It's been sanctioned by an apostle, and so it's this spiritual, mental, emotional manipulation that's going on aside from the obvious assault.
Yeah, and just to add, I mentioned earlier about how there's a Vice article that I did on my channel, and I will show the headline of it in a second. And within that, it has a lot of documents that they've obtained. And one of them is the actual contract for the couple's ruse. And it says things like, Tim Ballard and insert name here will not do anything. And besides, the playing in the couple's ruse, they will not be kissing on the mouth, such and such and such. And I think what happened was, when you present a contract like that, that's also what I think the church has alleged that's all that was sanctioned within what they could have said that they thought Tim Ballard was going to be doing during the couple's ruse, when it was just the opposite. So I think in Elder Ballard's, the apostle who actually just died, who I think died of stress related to this.
He did.
He did, yeah.
No.
So he just passed away maybe 3 weeks ago. I think the cortisol spikes in that man were probably through the roof, being implicated in all of this. But yes, the apostle M. Russell Ballard, who is connected with Tim Ballard, who have no relation. I think what happened was Tim Ballard told him, this is our contract for the couple's ruse. We're not going to kiss on the lips, but this came to me from God. And then Elder Ballard saying, okay, it came to you from God. I believe in your personal revelation. No kissing on the lips. That seems like a good tactic. And that is what he used to con the women into saying that the
Right.
couple's ruse overall was sanctioned by God. But as it's come out in different allegations from the lawsuit, the women who complained to OUR, who complained to the CEO, who said, Tim Ballard is doing this, this, and this to us. He's out of his mind. He's crazy. They all said, we know, but just keep this all under wraps, because what we're trying to do right now is stop Tim from hurting himself. Again, that's the selfishness. It's not about hurting the other victims and the other women who are all now victims of Tim Ballard. It was just, okay, just keep this under wraps, because Tim Ballard, he has a free reign. If you complain about it, he'll just fire people, is what these the word is, I always forget the word, these operators for OUR, when they complained, he'll just fire anybody, top leadership, operators, anybody who complained about these kinds of things. So he kind of got free reign to do whatever he wanted. Does that make sense?
Until he was forcibly removed from his own company, finally.
Yes, but he was still able to control OUR from the outside with the Spear Fund. That's also what's been really laid out in these lawsuits. He was given like $600,000 or something. He was given a Jeep Grand Cherokee. He was still able to be a contractor while he ran the Spear Fund, his new child sex trafficking I hope, organization. He still had a contract with OUR. So tons of that money was still funneled to him. Does that make sense?
So he was removed, but mostly just for the public eye in their, yeah. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, let's continue.
So the last thing, if you don't mind, I think this is really helpful information. We can maybe leave it in the link later. This is a great timeline that I think we are trying to get as many of the updates going as possible. But throughout the months of October, November, so many different things have happened. And I'm going to kind of go back to like November 20th. So many lawsuits, amendments have been added to this. So Bree Ryder is a social worker and a former Marine that was hired as an independent contractor for OUR. And this timeline right here explains a lot of that. So she's one of these other people. Another update I wanted to give is that she was the most well-trained, like I said, a social worker, a Marine, and she had her orbital bone crushed in. She'll never have proper eyesight ever again. Tim Ballard didn't want to take her to in an ambulance to the hospital. And this was during COVID in 2020. And they were in a training exercise where they're all supposed to dive for knives in the middle of this room. And she's like, this is idiotic, but I don't want the other girls to get hurt. So she did it. She had her orbital bone crushed in by a man and went unconscious. And this horribly like didn't need to happen kind of story.
Yeah.
And she was just severely injured in this training exercise. And I've actually been in contact with her. She was really happy that I did an article, or that I did a response to the Vice News article that was done about her. She was also supposed to engage in this couple's ruse with this other guy named Matt Cooper. And he's one of the other defendants in the lawsuit, who's also one of Tim Ballard's right-hand men. And a lot of just gross things that she was asked to do with Matt Cooper. And I think one of the things I just don't want people to ever miss is that Tim Ballard had his women that he wanted to take, like this hairdresser that I mentioned, that he wanted to take to the Caribbean. And if you want to make it full screen for a second.
Yeah.
It's just so that
I know how to do that. How about that?
Oh, I mean, us full screen. Sorry.
Oh, us.
Yeah, never mind. I just wanted to add this one thing. Speaking of updates. So one thing I hope people understand is when sexual abusers are trying to get away with their abuse, Tim Ballard has this, the couple's ruse going on. He has these reasons that he's telling the women that it's allowed by God, and he's got that going on, but he also needs to have mutually assured destruction with the women and then with the other men in the operation in OUR. So Matt Osborne is a former CEO at OUR who was also participating in hiring escorts to practice his chemistry. And then Matt Cooper is another person who Tim Ballard was also trying to have this mutually assured destruction. And so I just want to add, since we're talking about like culty behavior, we cannot miss the point of sometimes abusers. They will try to have as many people implicated and also drag them down to participate in really nefarious behavior. And so Bree Ryder, this former Marine I was mentioning, she was asked to engage in different sexual acts with Tim's basically like his best friend, Matt Cooper. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, on these different trips to the Caribbean, bust into like hoping that they were like doing something inside the bedroom of a catamaran and try to catch them so that they could have this mutually assured destruction. And she's like, what are you doing? This is, I'm a professional here. Like I'll do whatever it takes to save the kids. But Tim Ballard was constantly egging them on to do more things like he was doing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I never
Yeah.
want that to ever go underplayed because that is a common tactic of abusers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is Bree Ryder's story, and she is again another one of these women in this lawsuit. She's an absolute badass too. And I'll go to the next slide. So, like I mentioned, the women accusing OUR founder Tim Ballard of sexual assault speak out, and Adam Herbert has this fantastic thread on Twitter that I just wanted to quickly go through. And the court documents list Catherine Ballard, which is Tim Ballard's wife, as one of the defendants. And um, a lot of people were wondering how much Tim Ballard's wife knew about all of this. Well, these additional filings by Celeste Boris and Mike Boris add a lot of insight into that. It says amended lawsuit states the horrible irony of OUR is that it claimed to lead the fight against sexual exploitation worldwide, yet the nonprofit enabled a serial predator, Timothy Ballard, to operate with impunity, attempting to pit sexual assault victims against others. That's what I meant with like this mutually assured destruction kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then this section was also removed from the original complaint. Tim Ballard participated in several sexual acts with the exception of sexual penetration in various states of undress while on OUR ops missions. And then the psychic, I want to put a pin in the psychic. A lot of people have been wondering, why was
Right.
Tim
I forgot
Ballard
to mention that.
Tim Ballard was getting these ketamine treatments and talking to some deceased person named Nephi. And I have an insight that nobody else has talked about yet that I'll put another pin in that. So Tim Ballard was paying this psychic hundreds of $1,000s a year, who I describe as like the Ghislaine Maxwell to his Jeffrey Epstein, basically having a woman in the mix to convince other women that these are sanctioned acts by God and giving
Right.
all kinds of revelation on their behalf, saying that they were married in a previous life. We've talked about how Visions of Glory is it's its own kind of cult within a cult of Mormonism. This book that's written by Tom Harrison that a lot of people, the Daybells and so forth, have glommed onto, that lead to some really problematic behaviors. And let me see what else I wanted to read from this. I'm going to skip to, this is another allegation from Celeste Boris, again, his former executive assistant, where Tim Ballard allegedly said to her, I will do anything to save children or trafficked women. Anything. I would F a goat or a pig or even a goldfish if it meant a child would be saved, wrote Tim Ballard in a text message, according to the lawsuit.
Oh boy.
And then, yeah, and I can pause there if you have any other response to that. I know we're just blasting through, but we need a second to breathe on that kind of stuff. Would you keep your hands to yourself, Tim Ballard? I don't know. Would you do that?
I mean, I wouldn't put him past him to dive into some bestiality because, you know, from what we've been seeing, it seems like that's something he might actually do. I don't know. I don't want to overstep, like, but
people are like, would you just actually do what experts in your field have asked you to do? No, I wouldn't do that, but I would do this. I'll compare it to bestiality. Tim Ballard is definitely unhinged. So I love when we have screenshots, and we are getting so many screenshots in this new update. Others inside OUR were angry that OUR hid what Ballard was doing and sent out an anonymous letter to wealthy donors, including Tony Robbins. And this goes into saying how there's an anonymous letter regarding the true reason behind Tim Ballard's departure from OUR that was likely when mentioned in Vice News article. There are worries that his new Spear Fund is only a cover so he can continue to do this with women. People need to know. And it goes into saying, we are reaching out to provide you with valuable information that led to the recent resignation of Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad. Unfortunately, OUR's board of directors and attorneys have made agreements preventing OUR's executives from discussing the results of the investigation. And this basically is just this hush hush going around. It says lawsuit states Celeste Boris was required to pay for Tim Ballard after he got fired from Operation Underground Railroad after being groomed and sexually victimized by him. Others inside OUR were angry and sent out an anonymous letter to wealthy donors. So all kinds of stuff going on underneath the surface there. And
real quick, can we
yep,
pause?
go for it.
And I just want to mention the fact that it's been known now that not Tim Ballard, Elder Ballard, who recently passed away, apostle of the Mormon Church, was leaking tithing records so that Tim could basically target the wealthy tithing payers to get them to donate. So there's a little fun fact that I thought was worth mentioning.
Yeah, I can save. I can rattle off a bunch of other stuff that are also in the lawsuits as well. Exactly like that, Attorney General Sean Reyes making sure that the victims were silenced as well. And that's like literally his job, is to help get justice for people being defrauded. And he's actually actively silencing victims, actively helping attain Tim Ballard's status and untouchability and all kinds of disgusting stuff. But definitely the tithing one is one of the most shocking. You pay your tithing, assuming that this is going to the Lord's funds to do the most work, when it's actually going to be handed over to somebody to help them abuse people and further their sexual predation. Pretty gross stuff. And I don't know why the church doesn't have to just take accountability for that.
Right. And why would they? Because they never take accountability for everything. And for those who don't know, if you're LDS Mormon, you are required to pay 10% of your income to the church to be a member in good standing. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's not just people who are choosing to donate here and there. Every member of the church is required to give 10% of their income. And those records were then given to OUR so that they could target the people who had the most money to get more donations from them. Okay, we can move on.
Yeah, sick stuff. And then at the last of these violent assaults, Ballard ejaculated onto the clothes of plaintiff Celeste Boris, which piece of clothing has been turned over to law enforcement. Linden City Police Department has not commented. I'm just going to read this part of the article. Number 149, at several points of time during her employment with Ballard, Ballard violently abused and assaulted plaintiff Celeste Boris under the false pretense of the couple's ruse and Operation Bodyguard in locations across the United States and in other countries. At the last of these violent assaults, Ballard ejaculated onto the clothing of plaintiff Celeste Boris, which piece of clothing has been turned over to law enforcement. Again, we have some DNA evidence. There's nothing like having DNA evidence in cases like this.
Can't get around that. That's an obvious one. So I'm glad that she still has that.
Exactly. And if you read through the lawsuit and the allegations in there, I would say Celeste Boris has some of the most just disgusting things that have happened to her. I mean, being like digitally penetrated and assaulted by massage parlor / sex workers, while Tim Ballard watched and said, "Oh, I never got to see this up close done before." Well, she had to laugh and play along. And Tim Ballard saying like, "Oh, that was," and when she's not trained, she just is literally like an assistant that he flies out and he just sees if she can handle this. And then he says stuff like, "That's so good. We got the trafficker's name now. So many kids are going to be saved from that." And she's there for a long time. She knows that nothing ever came of her being assaulted like that. That wasn't for anything. Tim Ballard always just projected that he was a lot more tied into finding these trafficking networks than he ever was, when it really, as that Marine, that woman that goes under the pseudonym of Allison, as she talks about in the Vice article that I covered, It was really just traveling to the Caribbean on a really expensive vacation, all paid for by OUR. Tim Ballard having the time of his life, living it up on a catamaran and on these private islands with private chefs and having fun on the water and the sun and sand. And again, all of that being footed by the OUR donors and
Wow.
and really all it was is when they finally got their operations to get started, it was literally just somebody having a Google Maps of bars and different tourist areas and massage parlors in like, the American Virgin Islands, the US Virgin
Yeah.
Islands. It's really not that complicated. He'd just go into these different bars and massage parlors and ask if they had a wider scene, trying to get something. But all that did technically, as this former Marine alleges, is all that really did was actually create a market
For trafficking.
for trafficking. Because if you
Yeah.
ask, what's the wider scene, and people are poor enough, they will go grab their girlfriend or their child or somebody if there's a wealthy man flipping around money. That's also Paul Hutchinson, who's also another operator with Tim Ballard. That's also what happened with him in Mexico. Is they kept asking for younger and younger girls, and then he ended up touching the exposed breast of a minor in Mexico. Because if you ask for it, people will bring it to you, and it's not like you're infiltrating these networks. You're really
Yeah.
you're
Creating the
really
problem
creating the problem.
and
So,
pretending to be the solution.
and getting paid to be the solution. And
Yeah.
it's almost obvious. A man with that kind of ego, it's not so surprising.
Real quick before you move on, people are talking about Sean Reyes in the comments. Just so everyone knows, we are getting to that point, so it is coming.
Yeah. Finally, I wanted to read one of the other screenshots.
Make this bigger.
This is complainant says Tim Ballard tried to contact Celeste Boris after she filed her lawsuit in an attempt to further manipulate her into releasing her claims against him. This is, again, witness tampering, intimidation, all the stuff that is completely immoral and illegal. Will you please just call me? You are like a sister to me. Why cut me off? Why? Crying emoji. Tell me what I owe you. I've always told you, just tell me and I will pay. It seems like a admission of guilt there, Tim.
Okay.
I will give you
Yeah.
whatever we owe you. I read it. I read it. Why, Celeste? You know what you wrote is not truth. Why? I love you like a sister and hope you live well. I will never understand. And it says Celeste Boris signed a separation and release agreement, but her attorneys say it is void for several reasons. To pit one sexual assault victim against another sexual assault victim is unconscionable. It is illegal. Since the other cases have become public, it is apparent that Catherine Ballard, an employee of OUR who made over $100,000 annually, has been conspiring with her husband, Tim Ballard, to promote the couple's ruse and lie about the women he sexually assaulted. Lawsuit states Catherine Ballard and Tim Ballard were not blindsided by the allegations against him. They knew by March 2023, if not sooner. Catherine stated she is very aware of the couple's ruse, and there's more allegations that she is somebody who also intimidated these victims from coming forward. And the other thing that do you want to have any comments on that before I move into my favorite thing I was saving for later?
Well, my only comment would just be it's shocking to know that his own wife knew about it and was discouraging people from coming forward. I mean, I understand there's a lot of manipulation there. He's clearly very much like a cult leader. We did a 3-hour episode on it on your channel about how Tim Ballard is like a cult leader.
I'm so sorry, man. I could have edited that bad boy down.
No, it's fine. We were here for it.
Love it.
But all that to say, I know that she's probably also been manipulated and coerced in her own way. It's just really sad to know that
they have 9
she
kids
knew
together.
about this. Not 9 children. She
have 9
knew about
kids,
this and chose to not only not report it, but tried to keep the victims quiet. So it's just really upsetting.
Right. I love what that Marine said. Bree Ryder is her real name. She goes by Allison in some of these documents. And in the Vice article, she says that Catherine Ballard is like a Stepford wife, that like there's just nothing there. She's very blunt. So I can believe that like her husband, this priesthood leader, he says that this is what is allowed. I don't know if she's just as evil and cunning and she wants the money, or she really truly believes that Tim Ballard was called of God to do this.
Right.
And so anyway, when religion and money and sex all get intertwined like this, oh man, this is probably one of the biggest stories of the church and what all of those things do to a man and to a family and to an organization.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to make sure that people know that you may not know before, there is this article that says Blaze News investigates. Again, Blaze News is owned by Glenn Beck, who used to be a financer and major player with Tim Ballard, used to be best buds. And now that Glenn Beck has seen and investigated what these women say, he has turned on Tim Ballard, and he and his news organization, The Blaze, have released a lot of really good investigative pieces. And this one says the psychic who guided Tim Ballard and some Operation Underground Railroad missions for years. And if you want to look up this article, you can actually hear voice recordings of Janet Russin, Tim Ballard's psychic, talking about what his mission is. He's worried, how he will operate as CEO. She's the woman who told Tim Ballard which women to go after next for the couples ruse. So she's highly implicated in grooming and manipulating these women. But what I think is really interesting that nobody else has been talking about, that is revealed in this article, wait for this, Shalise, everybody has been saying that she has been talking to the dead Mormon prophet Nephi, right?
Uh-huh.
And that she's communicating with Nephi. What actually has been happening is that apparently Tim Ballard has like a great-great-grandfather named like Nephi Ballard. It's actually not the dead Mormon prophet Nephi. She's talking to a relative, a dead relative of Tim Ballard, which actually makes a lot more sense because
way more sense.
she also, if you remember the Gardy Marty story where Tim Ballard went down to Haiti to try to rescue this 3-year-old boy who 7 years later, who had been 10 years old, to try to go rescue this little Haitian boy that had been kidnapped, had no intelligence whatsoever except for Janet Russin. He was communicating through Janet Russin, and Janet Russin was talking to Gardy Marty's passed away relatives. And so it makes sense that she thinks that the way to get this work done is not through actual intelligence, but through her psychic readings to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So I just wanted to add that we have a lot more information about how much his psychic has played into this.
Right.
And again, there is this article that I covered over on my channel that's about Bree Ryder, about her orbital bone and her eye being kicked in and everything that went down with her and Matt Cooper on that catamaran and on that private island. And she's pretty badass. Then finally, Attorney General Sean Reyes of Utah won't run for re-election. He says he believes the women who have accused Tim Ballard. Well, that's a big major update, as well as Reyes will launch a criminal investigation into alleged sexual assault by friend Tim Ballard. So definitely hopefully correcting his disgusting past of all of the things that he has done for his own self-aggrandizement. But Sean Reyes is a dirty, dirty politician. I will have a lot more stuff on my channel coming out about the dirty, crooked stuff that he's been doing that would leave you shook. But at least he's not trying to run for re-election, and these criminal investigations will hopefully be moving forward on Tim Ballard. So there's as much of that update as I could get to. Let's see if I have anything else.
Wow.
And last thing I have is, if you want me to play this, I can. This is the women's attorney who responds to what I just said about Attorney General Sean Reyes. And she basically is saying that, hey, dude, where's your accountability? You propped this guy up for a very long time. You need to come forward and talk about how much you have profited off of OUR and your friendship with Tim Ballard, and you did not do your job as Attorney General. You did silence these women. I'll just read the tweet from Adam Herberts from Fox 13 News. Says, plaintiffs respond to the future resignation and cooperation of Attorney General Sean Reyes. One of their attorneys released this video very shortly after Reyes' announcement. They still have 4 lawsuits against Tim Ballard /OUR and 1 lawsuit against Reyes. So again, Reyes is implicated, and he is a defendant in all of this. And so basically the video, we don't have to play it, is the attorney for the women saying, like, WTF, Sean Reyes? When are you going to take some accountability for your play in this? You can
Yeah.
investigate all you want. You cannot run for attorney general again, but you need to come clean about what you have done to make this entire mess and these women's lives a living hell. So that is
Yeah.
mostly my update. Any comments, questions,
Wow.
concerns? I think we did a
Girl,
good
you did
rundown.
it in 45
Yeah.
minutes. I'm so impressed. Thank you for putting that together. I know that took a lot of work. We have a lot of people here and in the chat, over 600 people tuning in. I think that's a really great update. So, I guess if you could sum up the entire update for those who are just joining us, what would you
Okay.
say the major points are?
The major points are that Tim Ballard of OUR is absolutely going down in flames, and everyone around him are disassociating from him as much as possible. The women have come forward, shown their names, their faces, their allegations, their text messages, and Tim Ballard is obviously a very, very sick individual, needs some help, but this is going to be going on for a long time because don't forget, we still haven't even gotten to like them going to court, like what happens when they're in court actually on the stand and what's
Yeah.
going to be happening from that. So we're just getting started
Yeah. Do we
with
know when
this.
the court date is? Someone asked. Is there an
I think
update
the
with
last
that?
time that the attorney had a press conference, I don't think they had a date yet. And if they do, they haven't shared it publicly. That's what I
Okay.
believe.
All right. Well, thank you for the update, Kara. You nailed it. Well done. Thank you guys for watching. In like a minute here or less, we are going to be going live on Kara's channel to talk about specifically the Mormon Church and the ways that they have mishandled child SA cases, silence victims, even punish those who are trying to speak out against these perpetrators within the church. So I'm going to be going over a few cases that have recently surfaced. So if you stay on this live until it ends, you will automatically be redirected to Kara's page. And if you want to support the channel, you can check out our merch at cultstoconsciousness.com under the merch tab. This is one of our shirts, Cults of Consciousness. We have other things like Apostates Unite. I'm sorry for what I said when I was in a cult. Some holiday sweaters, which are my personal favorite. And if you want to go to Costa Rica with us, we're trying to get Kara to come. You can click the
August,
link in the
right?
description. Yeah, it's next August. We're going to Costa Rica. Mom is confirmed. I know we have some Mama Bear fans on here. She's coming with us. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So to do something a little less culty and just a little more relaxing, you can do that. Okay, and I think that's it. Oscar's on my lap, and I'm going to let him continue sleeping there for the next live. and
Great.
and until next time, hit the like button, subscribe, go to Kara's channel, subscribe, and we'll see you over there in a little bit. Until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.